Our book today is called The Story of Ferdinand, and the author is Monroe Leaf. And the drawings in this book are by a man named Robert Lawson. He did the drawings. The Story of Ferdinand by Monroe Leaf. Once upon a time in Spain, there was a little bull, and his name was Ferdinand. All the other bulls he lived with would run and jump and butt their heads together, but not Ferdinand. He liked to just quietly sit and smell the flowers. He had a favorite spot out in the pasture under a cork tree. It was his favorite tree, and he would sit in its shade all day and smell the flowers. Sometimes his mother, who was a cow, would worry about him. She was afraid he would be lonesome all by himself. "Why don't you run and play with the other bulls and skip and butt your head?" she would say. But Ferdinand would shake his head. "I like it better here, where I can just sit quietly and smell the flowers." And because she was an understanding mother, even though she was a cow, she let him just sit there and be happy. And as the years went by, Ferdinand grew and grew until he was very strong and very big. All the other bulls who had grown up with him in the same pasture would fight each other all day long. They would butt each other and stick each other with their horns. What they wanted, most of all, was to be picked to fight at the bullfights in Madrid. But not Ferdinand. He still liked to just sit quietly under the cork tree and smell the flowers. One day, 5 men came in very funny hats to pick the biggest, the fastest, the roughest bull to fight in the bullfights in Madrid. All the other bulls, Ferdinand's friends, they ran around snorting and butting, leaping and jumping, so the men would think that they were very, very, very strong and fierce and pick them. Ferdinand knew that they wouldn't pick him, and he didn't care. So he went out to his favorite cork tree to sit down. He didn't look, unfortunately, where he was sitting. And instead of sitting on the nice, cool grass in the shade, he unfortunately sat on a bumblebee. Well, if you were a bumblebee and a bull sat on you, what would you do?
Sting him.
You would sting him. And that is just what this bee did to poor Ferdinand. Wow, did it hurt? Ferdinand jumped up with a snort. He ran around puffing and snorting, butting and pawing the ground as if he were crazy. The 5 men saw him, and they all shouted with joy. Here was the largest, the fiercest, the most terrible bull of all, just the one for the bullfights in Madrid. So they took him away for the bullfight day in a cart. What a day it was. Flags flying, bands playing. All lovely ladies had flowers in their hair. They had a parade into the bull ring. First came the bandoleros with long, sharp pins with ribbons on them to stick in the bull and make him mad. And next came the picadors, who rode very skinny horses, and they had these long spears to stick in the bull and make the bull even madder than he already was from getting stuck by the bandoleros. Then came the matador, the proudest of all. He thought he was very handsome and bowed to the ladies. He had on a red cape and a sword, and he was supposed to stick the bull last of all. And then came the bull. And you know who that was, don't you? Ferdinand. They called him Ferdinand the Fierce, and all the bandoleros were afraid of him, and the picadors were afraid of him, and the matador was scared stiff. Ferdinand ran to the middle of the ring, and everyone shouted and clapped because they thought he was going to fight fiercely and butt and snort and stick his horns around. But
he didn't.
not Ferdinand. When he got to the middle of the ring, he saw the flowers in all of the ladies' hairs. And he just sat down quietly and smelled. He wouldn't fight and be fierce no matter what they did. He just sat and smelled. And the bandoleros were mad and the picadors were madder. And the matador was so mad, he cried because he couldn't show off with his cape and his sword. So they had to take Ferdinand home. For all I know, he is sitting there still under his favorite cork tree, smelling the flowers, just quietly, and he is very happy. Why did Mrs. Shanks pick this book? Well, I'm sure that all of you know what a classic book is. A classic book is a book that has, first of all, been around for a very long time. This book, The Story of Ferdinand, has been around since 1936. That means that it's probably, 73 years old? And it has never, ever been out of print. It's been in print continuously since 1936. Not only that, but in 1938, this book was made into a cartoon by Walt Disney. And do you know that that cartoon from this book won an Oscar? It won an Oscar from this story. So it's a very famous book. And the reason that it's a classic, first of all, because it's been around for a long time, but it's been read by generations of children. And each one of those generations of children have found something new and different in this book. It's spoken to them. It's spoken some kind of truth that is essential to all generations. This is what Mr. Leaf said when he wrote the book. He and Mr. Lawson obviously were friends, the illustrator and the author. And he said, I wrote Ferdinand in the hope that it would amuse Robert Lawson enough to create pictures that would create a quiet laugh. Now, I believe in laughter. There is no better passport through the world than a smile and a laugh. And I hope that that's what this book provides for you today.